I'll run through in a moment, but we need again an onion. So very quickly now, we've been through onion preparation before. So we cut down through the onion, down onto a chopping board, right through the root end, and then peel off the skin like this. There we go, just pull off the skin. If you don't like onion, you could miss it out, but obviously the flavour won't be quite the same. And you might want to double any other vegetables that we put into this so that you get the bulk. There we go, that's being a bit sticky. So pull off the skin of the onion, leaving on the root, and then just put the skin to one side. We don't want that to get in the final chilli. There. So now, leaving the root end, following the stripe, making a bridge hold, cut right down, right up to the root, but not through the root, like this, down, parallel lines, following the stripes, stop, bridge, turns into a claw hold, and then we go down. Keep your fingers tucked in, and eventually you can hold on to the root end. So that's that half done. This half, again, like I say, following the stripes, parallel cuts right down, and then turn it into a claw hold and across, right angles with the cuts that you made earlier, and right across, holding on to the root end. Root goes in for disposal, and that's one onion roughly chopped. I'm going to put that onto a plate. We're going to use that a little bit later, and then turn to the next cut, which is going to be with a carrot. We're going to do a dice cut. So this time I'm going to remove the peel. This is an old carrot and its peel is a little bit tough. Sometimes the peel is very light and you can leave it on in that case, but this has got a few knotty bits in it and a little bit of soil, so cut that off completely. Now take off the top end. Don't cut it right down here, you only need to take off the very end bit and the very nose bit if you think it needs cutting off. Now at this point what I'm going to do is to cut it into manageable lengths, and I am going to now cut it in planks. Now it's going to roll around, so just take the end bit like that so it's a little bit more stable. Cut it down. Now some of you are going to think, oh, carrot, that's not a traditional vegetable to put in a chilli, and you'd be quite right, it isn't, but we're not eating enough vegetables, so it's a very good idea if we can hide some vegetables inside the chilli, and it does add a certain sweetness. So laying down two of the planks there, one on top of the other to save time, and we cut right down and through until we have got sticks. We put the sticks there, and then the same as before, keeping the fingers out of the way, going across, cutting into dice. Now, one of the things people tend to try and do is to cut it into circles. I've seen this so often. Cut it into circles and then start cutting each one up. One, you don't get a dice. Two, it's going to take you absolutely ages. These little strange bits that are left can just be done in exactly the same way so that we can use them, because when we cook it, it's going to cook down anyway. So one more demonstration of that. Cut the edge off, cut that off, put two together like that. If you get more proficient, you could do more than two, but I wouldn't recommend it when you're starting out. And cutting down, move that one out of the way, so that we've got dice. And we're going to use that, like I say, to add a little bit more fibre into the chilli. So it's going to be quite a high fibre dish because we're going to use some kidney beans, and kidney beans of course are very high in fibre. So that's kidney beans and a carrot, adding fibre to the dish as well as bulk. So that's that. Other ingredients that we're going to need. We're going to need, like I said, a tin of kidney beans. I've taken the lid off and I've drained them. I've drained the liquid out. It is only in water, but I've just made sure that there's not too much liquid in there. I'm going to use some garlic. Again, I'm cheating. It's already minced in the tube. And I'm going to use a little bit of There we go. A little bit of tomato puree. Now the tomato puree, I need a good tablespoonful, and that's a little bit short. So this is a new one. It's a tube. I'm going to undo the tube, and it's sealed with metal across the top. So turn round the lid and just puncture that with the lid, and then I can get a nice tablespoonful of tomato puree, and that will then go back into the fridge and can be stored. I'm also going to use some chilli powder. This is a fairly mild chilli powder. Because I'm going to use the chilli powder, I need to put a spoon on there, a clean spoon. I might very well use a little bit of flour later, talk about that later. It's just a tablespoonful. A stock cube, and a little bit of chocolate, but you don't need the whole bar. What a shame, I'll have to eat the rest of it later. We're just going to literally need a couple of pieces. You can leave this out. It does add a nice richness and it adds a bit of dark colour. A couple of pieces is usually enough. So just 2 slices. And it doesn't have to be the best dark chocolate. That's just a cheap bar from a supermarket. If you wish to, you could use a chilli, but I'm using chilli powder, as I said. So those are the ingredients. I've got everything I need on there, so I'm going to go over to the cooker and put the ingredients there. I've got my pan ready, and I've also got a spoon ready, and I'm going to get a little bit of the beef. I've not got the beef. Where do you reckon the beef is? The beef is in the fridge. Another high risk food. So if I get leaving it in there until the very, very last moment before I'm going to need it. Then I shall take the lid off. There we are. Peel it back so that it is ready to use. And as soon as I've finished with it, that container will go straight in the covered dustbin so that we don't have a risk of cross-contamination in the kitchen. So there we are. The only thing that I haven't mentioned is rice to go with the chilli. Now there are lots of different ways of making the rice, but I'm just going to demonstrate a very simple, very much a cheats way of doing it. We do it like this in school because there's minimal risk of burning it. So you measure out the amount of rice that you want. So I want just a small amount of rice there. I'm just going to go, that will do. There we go, and I'm looking at the volume of it. It's up to the 100 mark. Pop that into the pan, and then I've got here some boiling water, and I'm going to do 2 of the same measurements up to the 100 mark. There we go. That goes into the pan. And if you have a look at that in there, it's roughly a centimetre, I would say, above the top of the rice. And that's what you're sort of aiming for. And then I'm going to take that, put a lid on it, and put it on a full heat. And there we go. I'm just going to bring that up to the boil. When it boils, it's going to foam, it's going to get, it's going to rise up the pan. And at that point, I will switch it off and just leave it. I'm not taking the lid off it. Not used any salt, absolutely nothing. I'm just going to leave it with the lid on, and then it will sit there and it will cook in its own heat. This will work with the easy cook rices. It doesn't work, and certainly doesn't work, with whole grain rice. For that you would have to give it 5 or 10 minutes of simmering and then put the lid on and push it to the back of the cooker and just leave it, and it will cook itself. But in school, if we're using the easy cook rice, that's the easiest way to do it. So I'm going to bring it up to the boil, turn it down, switch it off and forget it. Now, having got all my ingredients assembled, I'm going to think about preparing the stock. So I'm going to use a small jug and a stock cube, which apparently one is supposed to not open it up and crush it, but one is supposed to squash it between your fingers and create a little bag of crumbled stock cube. I think this stock cube may not crumble very well because it's quite a, what I've had in the cupboard, I think it's got just a little bit moist. Well, there we are. Oh no, there we go. A little bag opens up. There. So that's the way you're supposed to do that. I was 60 when I found out that that was the way you're supposed to use it. Now, in the recipe on the school website, it says that we're supposed to put in 100 millilitres of water. I've put in 150, I think. Yes, 150 millilitres of water. A little bit more, because I think experience tells me I might need it. There we are. Right. Okay. Going over to the pan, there are two ways of doing this. The first way would be to put some oil in and fry off the onion and then add in the meat. But that's obviously adding in some extra oil. If we want to try to avoid the addition of extra oil, then what I'm going to do is to dry fry. Oh, there we go. Put the heat on, tip that in, check that you've not got a piece of paper in the bottom of that. I'm going to pop that in the dustbin now straight away, out of sight, and rinse my fingers. There we go. And then try to break this down. Now I've just bought one packet of mince, it happened to be 450 grams. The recipe will work with anything from 250 to 600 grams, quite frankly, but you might need to add extra liquid if you're using more mince. Just have to play it a little bit by ear. The quantities aren't that actually important, to be honest. This is cooking, not baking. When you're baking, you've got to be very accurate. When you're cooking, it's less accurate, and it's more down to judgment by eye. So here we go, trying to get some of the fat out of this meat. I'm not expecting a huge amount to come out because this is the 5% fat. It's a very lean minced steak. It is beef, but it's very lean fat. You can buy the 10%, which is a bit cheaper, and the 20% fat, which is even cheaper, and there'll be a lot of fat comes out of that. But I'm just going to try and cook that down a little bit and encourage some of the oil to come out of it. So there we go, some of the fat is seeping out, you can hear it. There we go, just mash it down, move it round, watch the heat. There, I'm just using a frying pan like this so that you can see, but if you're at home and you want to use a saucepan, that's fine, it's entirely up to you. There we go, so that's beginning to brown off. Now if you have a look over here, I've got the rice that I mentioned earlier. It was brought right up to the boil, and it's now sitting there off the heat, cooking in its own heat. I'm not going to take the lid off. If I take the lid off, the heat's going to come out and it's going to delay the cooking process. So just leave it. Don't be tempted to look at it at this point. There we are. So as that's going down underway, you can probably give it a little bit longer than me, but I'm just going to put in the onions, and that onion has got the garlic in it as well. Put that back on the tray. I'm also going to add in the carrot. The carrot can go in like that. I'm just going to stir it round. Now, there we are. Just make sure it's not catching on that side. There's some moisture now coming out of the onion as well. So sweat that down. A bit of a shake. And what's going to go in next? Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'll probably put in the flour. The flour is going to absorb any extra liquid. Sometimes I don't use flour, and I don't think it's on the school recipe. It's entirely up to you whether you use it or not. But the flour does help to absorb the stock, and it thickens the dish a little bit. But all you need is to sprinkle in a tablespoonful, no more, of ordinary plain flour. Like I say, it's not on the recipe, but just cook that in and it will help the whole thing to thicken up a little bit later when I add the liquid. So the flour's gone in, and now I'm going to add in the tomato puree next. Tomato puree, some people mix the tomato puree in with the stock, which would be fine. And now I'm going to put half the stock in. I'm just going to move that round. I'm going to need more stock because I use the flour. It really doesn't matter. Now at this point we could carry on and we could add some tomatoes in and we could turn this into like a bolognese and herbs. But we're going to be making chilli. So before the cooking process actually starts, I'm going to add in some chilli powder. I've got a fairly mild chilli powder. This isn't a teaspoon, it's a half teaspoon that I'm using. So I've added a whole teaspoon in there and just cook that off. There we are, it's becoming quite rich. I've only added half my stock at the moment. The other half will be going in a minute. It's beginning to look a little bit more edible. Now the rest of the stock can go in, but at this point when I stir it, I want it to look like a slightly waterlogged football pitch, a field where you put your football boot in and you get backfill. So the water sort of seeps in. I'm just going to turn the heat down because it is getting very hot now. And that's not quite it. So just a little bit more water is fine. This is because of the extra of the flour that I added in. But I like the texture that the flour gives. Until we get that waterlogged football pitch. There, like that. You put your foot in it and you get backfill with water. Can you see that there? See the backfill? And that's the sort of consistency we want. But you're going to have to remain close watching it because it will definitely catch and burn if you leave it at this point. At the moment, in go my kidney beans. Let's just make sure we got that all in. And then just turn it, stir it and check again. Now we'll leave this to simmer on a very low heat. It's getting a little bit dry. If it does, you just add in a little bit of water. Put a lid on it and simmer it away. Turn the heat right down. Check on it every 5 minutes. Give it a stir and add more liquid, just water if you need it. So I'll do the chocolate later. There we go. Right, while the chilli is cooking, I've just taken the lid off the rice, and if you have a little look in that pan, you'll see little holes, and that's a good indication that actually the rice is ready, because all the steam has been forced up and it's made little holes in the rice. So I'm bringing it off. I'm just going to taste it, the clean spoon, just to check, and it is. It's cooked. So before I do anything else, I'm going to add a little bit of seasoning, a little bit of salt into the rice. And that is very much a case of if you want to add salt. It has absorbed its liquid, the water, and I'm now going to put it into a mould. So if I can bring it off the plate, which would be more sensible, just put it into the mould very carefully. Bring it through. You could do anything. It can be a cup, it could be a ramekin dish, it could be anything that you've got that you can use as a mould. I've never used this one as a mould before, so it is a little bit experimental, but I just thought we'd have a go. It's actually a safran dish for cooking in. So here we go. I'm just going to push it down inside the mould. Of course at home we wouldn't actually do this, but for presentation for exams it would be expected. And then I'm going to put a plate over the top and flick it over and see, there we go, we have a ring of rice. So getting a quick cloth and wipe up the mess that I've made here. Let's take that and that, just put them there. That's it. And now we're ready to go back to looking at the chilli. Now, if I switch off the chilli and just have a quick look at it, I've been checking it every 5 minutes. Here we go, and I did have to add some more water to it. It's now cooked and the carrot is soft. So again, a clean spoon and just taste it. It's really important that you do this. just the right chilliness. Now I'm just going to add a little bit of salt in. Oh yes, it's got a kick to it. And then the 2 bits of dark chocolate. Just broken them up. The heat from the chilli will melt them, but you do have to do a fair amount of stirring. So just stir those in and it should enrich the flavour. Chocolate and chilli have always gone hand in hand. The Mexicans and the Aztecs used to put chilli in their chocolate drinks when they first created chocolate. There we are. So mixed it all in and it gives it a lovely richness. Now again, clean spoon, so just clean that off, very important. And then we just taste again. It should, that's really nice. So, put my pan stand down to protect the tabletop because it is very hot. And then just spoon out the chilli into the centre of the rice. It will go a little bit over the edge of the rice because obviously you want enough chilli to eat. There we go. So very carefully put the chilli on the top like that. Put that one back there. There. A little bit of decoration, I think. A few chilli slices. And I have put in some onion into this, so I'm just going to put a little bit of sliced spring onion, which is what I had in the fridge. I was supposed to buy some coriander for it. I think it says that in the recipe, but I forgot. So I've just used a little bit of that. And there we've got, there's a little bit on that plate, so we're just going to wipe that off. There we are. So there is a chili con carne. Obviously, if you don't eat meat, you could replace the meat and you could use a variety of vegetables and beans, lots more different beans, or you could use corn mince just as easily.